Imagine a time, centuries ago, where survival was not a given but a relentless struggle. Picture yourself standing on a vast, barren land, where every breath of air feels like ice, and the ground beneath your feet is a mix of mud and snow that drags at your every step. The year is the Middle Ages, a time when kingdoms were ruled by kings and the fate of the common folk was held in the hands of those above them. But let me ask you this. What if I told you that amidst the endless suffering of the common people, there were untold stories of resilience, courage, and defiance, stories so powerful that they could change the course of history? For centuries, the poor, the laborers, the farmers, these people, forgotten by history, lived in the shadows of those who held the power. They worked tirelessly, their backs bent under the weight of their labor, their hands calloused and scarred by the hard soil they tilled. They were the silent army, the invisible ones who fed entire nations. And yet, their voices were silenced. But what if their struggle wasn't as silent as history tells us? What if they fought not just with their hands, but with their hearts, their minds, and their will to survive? What if, in the darkest moments of winter, when the cold threatened to devour them whole, they found a strength that none could imagine? For centuries, we've heard stories of knights, kings, and the grand battles that shaped the world. But what about those who lived in the margins? Those whose lives were dictated not by a crown or a sword, but by the very land they worked to survive on? This is not just a story of survival. It's a story of how ordinary people, crushed beneath the weight of oppression, found a way to fight back, against not just nature, but against the very powers that sought to control them. Stay with me as we journey through the coldest, most brutal winters, through hunger, disease, and the unyielding weight of injustice. But don't be fooled. The survival of these people was not just about getting by. It was about a fierce, quiet rebellion that defied the odds. In the next few moments, you will uncover stories that have been buried in the sands of time. You'll witness the unexpected alliances, the moments of hope that fueled entire communities, and perhaps, even learn how these uncelebrated heroes shaped the world we know today. You won't believe what they did to survive. And trust me, this is only the beginning. Part 1. A day of struggle. Imagine standing in a world where every step is a battle against forces you cannot control. A world where survival isn't a promise, but a daily fight. A time when the land you live on can either nurture you or take everything you've worked for. The year is the 14th century, and the land is cold, unforgiving. Every farmer, every laborer, every soul living here knows that nature doesn't care for the weak. For every crop you plant, there's a risk that the weather will betray you. For every inch of earth you till, there's a possibility it will swallow your hope whole. The seasons aren't just the passing of time. They are the testing grounds for everything you've ever fought for. The wind howls through the trees, and the cold seeps deep into your bones. Each day is an uphill struggle against forces that seem beyond your control. The harshness of the weather, the relentless cycle of planting and harvesting, all push you to the edge. But the real threat comes when the cold takes hold and the ground becomes as hard as stone. The earth that once nurtured you now holds nothing but hardship. And in that silence, the hunger begins to speak louder than anything else. With every storm that sweeps across the land, the crops die, and your chances of survival grow slimmer. You see the rain pouring down, soaking your hard-earned harvest into the mud. The dreams of a good season vanish before your eyes, and you are left with nothing but the bitter taste of defeat. The cold winds carry with them more than just a chill. They carry the scent of death, of a future uncertain, and a life hanging by the thinnest of threads. You are constantly walking the line between life and death. The hunger gnaws at you from the inside, a constant reminder of how fragile your existence really is. You can't afford to waste a single moment, a single chance. Every day is a countdown to the inevitable. But it's not just the cold that you fear, it's the loss of everything. The crops, the family, the hope. There are no second chances. You can't go back. The land doesn't forgive mistakes. Each moment, Each decision weighs heavily on you. The time to act is now, and there's no room for hesitation. If you fail, you lose everything. You're not just fighting the elements. You're fighting for your survival, for your family, for your place in this world. But survival comes at a cost. Every step forward feels like a sacrifice. Every piece of bread you eat, every drop of water you drink, is a reminder of what you've lost, and what you still have to lose. And yet, despite the odds, despite the constant threat of hunger, cold, and death, you keep fighting, because you know that if you stop, if you give in to despair, the land will swallow you whole. The storm will come, and it will leave you behind. There's no mercy, there's only the fight, the relentless pursuit of survival. No matter what, you press on, even when the world around you falls apart. You hold on, because in the end, it's not about winning or losing, it's about surviving. You're standing in the face of something far greater than yourself. And yet, you stand tall. You're not just a farmer. You're a warrior, and your fight is far from over. The storm may come, but you'll face it with everything you've got. Because this land is yours, and you will not let it take you down without a fight. Every season, every storm, every moment of hunger and fear, you stand firm, because to stop is to die, and you've survived too much to give up now. Part 2. The oppression and rule of the nobles. The Lord is the highest authority, and the peasants have no claim to land. They are subjects, bound to toil for the good of the nobles who rule over them. Every year, they bring their crops to the manor, a portion of everything they harvest, just to stay alive. It's not a fair exchange, it's a demand, a toll they must pay for the right to work the soil. But when the seasons are cruel and the harvest is poor, the toll becomes a crushing weight, and no mercy is shown. In times of scarcity, a crop that should have been bountiful is stripped away. It's not enough to pay the taxes, to feed their families. The Lord takes more than he needs, demanding their last bit of food, their last ounce of energy. The peasants are powerless to stop him, bound by laws they never wrote, shackled by an invisible hand they cannot see. Punishment for resistance is swift and brutal. One wrong word, one refusal to comply, and the guards are there, ready to strike, ready to silence the faintest cry of rebellion. The Lord's power is absolute, and the fear of retribution keeps even the bravest of men silent. The peasants are trapped in a cycle of fear, their souls crushed beneath the weight of it all. Yet in this moment of crushing oppression, something stirs. Not all peasants are cowed by the threat of punishment. Some still carry the fire of defiance, buried deep within their hearts. The young man, standing before the Lord's iron fist, knows the danger of resistance. But he also knows something greater. The spirit of the people cannot be broken so easily. He doesn't speak, but his eyes speak louder than any words could. For centuries, the peasants have been taught to bow their heads, to accept their place in the world. But there are whispers, quiet, hushed voices in the corners of the taverns, in the shadows of the marketplace, that speak of a different world, a world where they are not beneath the heel of the noble, where they have a voice, where they control their own fate. These whispers, though faint, begin to take root. They spread like wildfire among the oppressed, growing louder with each passing day. The Lord, though powerful, doesn't see what's coming. He doesn't see the fire that's burning beneath the surface, slowly growing, fed by the suffering of his people. He believes that fear will keep them in line, that his wealth and power are enough to crush any resistance. But the truth is, every pound of gold, every inch of land, cannot buy loyalty. True power lies in the will of the people, and when the people's will is pushed too far, it will break, and that breaking point is closer than the Lord can imagine. In the face of oppression, there is no choice but to fight, and fight they will, against the land, against the lords, against the system that has held them in chains for so long. The battle for their future has just begun. Part 3. The rebellion begins. A small, dimly lit cottage at the heart of the village. The walls are made of timber, and the air is thick with the scent of damp wood and the crackling warmth of a fire. A group of farmers, their faces weary but determined, are gathered around a wooden table. Their hands are rough from years of labor. Each of them knows the weight of what they're about to do. But they also know that there is no turning back now. Farmer 1, standing tall, eyes burning with rage. We have suffered enough. Every year, they raise the taxes. Every year, our harvests are poorer. And still, they take from us. How much longer will we let them trample us into the dirt? The others murmur in agreement. Their expressions a mixture of fear, anger, and frustration. Their fists clench involuntarily as their minds race with the weight of the decision at hand. Farmer 2, hesitant, looking down at his weathered hands. But if we rise up against the Lord, we will starve. We have no army, no weapons. They have soldiers. They have wealth. They have power. Farmer 1 slams his fist on the table, making the room go silent. His voice is low but firm, filled with a passion that cannot be ignored. His gaze shifts from one farmer to the next, locking eyes with each one in turn. Farmer 1, defiantly, we have nothing left to lose. What do we fear? The soldiers? They are just men like us. The Lord's power is not invincible. He rules over us because we let him. But if we stand together, united in defiance, they will have no power over us. If we fight, we can win. There is a tense silence in the room. The weight of his words hangs heavily in the air. The farmers exchange uncertain glances. But the fire in Farmer 1's voice is undeniable. Slowly, the spark of rebellion begins to light in their hearts. Farmer 3, quietly, almost to himself. But they have the king's men. They have the law. What chance do we stand? Farmer 1, turning sharply, his eyes blazing with resolve. The law? The law is just a tool to control us. It has no power over a people who choose to rise together. They can control us through fear, through hunger, but only if we let them. What if we stop letting them? What if we take back what's ours? What they've stolen from us? The room falls silent, the weight of Farmer 1's words sinking in. For the first time, a spark of hope begins to flicker in their hearts. The idea of standing up to their oppressors, of reclaiming their dignity, takes root. Farmer 2, eyes darting nervously around the room. But what if we fail? What if they punish us? What will happen to our families? Farmer 1 leans forward, his voice growing low and steady, filled with quiet fury. Farmer 1, gritting his teeth. If we fail, they will punish us anyway. If we do nothing, they will bleed us dry, and we will die slowly from hunger and misery. But if we fight, we may lose everything, but we will also gain something. Freedom, dignity, the right to live on our own terms. Can you honestly say that living like this is better? Asterisk. A long silence fills the room. Farmer 2 looks around at his fellow farmers, the weight of the question hanging heavily in the air. One by one, they begin to nod, their fear slowly being replaced by something much stronger, a fierce desire for change. Farmer 4, gripping his fists, determination flooding his face. I've seen my children starve. I've seen my wife cry because we had nothing to feed them. I've worked my hands to the bone. And still, they take more. Enough. I want my children to grow up free. I will fight. For them. For us all. The room erupts into murmurs of agreement. Each farmer, once silent, now speaks with quiet conviction. Their faces harden with the resolve of those who know the price of their defiance. The tension in the room builds, the spark of rebellion igniting in their souls. Farmer 1, raising his hand for silence, his voice ringing through the room. If we are to fight, we cannot be divided. We must strike as one. With all our might, we must act quickly, before the Lord's men have time to prepare. We take what we can. And when the time comes, we stand and fight for our land, for our lives, and we fight until we win. The group stands, their faces set with determination. They gather their tools and weapons in silence, their resolve unshakable. The quiet murmurs of rebellion grow louder. stronger. As they make their way toward the center of the village, each step they take is filled with purpose, each footfall marking a new chapter in their lives. As they leave the cottage, the camera lingers on their faces, hard, determined, ready to make their stand. Their voices, once whispers in the night, now echo with the power of defiance. These were not just peasants anymore. They were the seeds of rebellion. And rebellion cannot be stopped once it has taken root. It's not the sword that wins battles, but the will to wield it. The camera pulls back to reveal the villagers moving together, their silhouettes dark against the setting sun. They form a single line, heads held high, walking toward the village square where the Lord's men stand. The air is thick with anticipation, and the tension is palpable. These people had nothing left but their lives, and they were willing to give it all to regain their freedom. They walked into the unknown, knowing the consequences of failure were deadly, but the cost of inaction was far worse. As they moved forward, the air around them thickened, not with fear, but with purpose. The farmers arrive at the village square, where the Lord's men stand in formation, their swords drawn. The farmers stop just short of them, standing their ground. The camera lingers on the farmers' faces, determined, unyielding. The Lord's soldiers, ready for battle, saw these farmers as nothing more than pests to be crushed. But the farmers saw themselves as something far more powerful than the Lord's men realized. They saw strength in numbers, the power of a unified voice. And in that moment, something shifted. The soldiers, confident in their superiority, could not see the storm that was coming, a storm they had no hope of surviving. Farmer 1, stepping forward, his voice loud and clear. Today, we take back what is ours. You do not own us anymore. We will no longer live in fear. We will no longer bow to you. The Lord's soldiers hesitate, uncertainty flickering in their eyes. The farmers, once seen as weak, now stand tall, their numbers growing by the minute. The air is thick with tension as the two sides face each other, ready to clash. Revolutions don't begin in the grand halls of power. They begin in the quiet corners of villages, in the hearts of the oppressed, where the spirit of resistance is born. The fight had begun. The young man, his face determined, his fists clenched, as the sound of marching footsteps fills the air. And when the storm of rebellion came, it would sweep through the land, and nothing could stand in its way. Part 4. Facing the church and resilience. The morning light filtered through the stained glass windows of the small chapel, casting colored shadows on the cold stone floor. The air inside was thick with the scent of incense and the flickering warmth of the fire that crackled weakly in the corner. A group of weary peasants stood in the center of the room, their faces hollow with exhaustion, their hands calloused and rough from years of back-breaking labor. At the front of the room, the priest stood, his eyes cold and calculating, as his voice echoed through the chapel. "You must pray, my children," he said, his hands raised to the heavens. "You must worship the holy saints, for it is only through their grace that your suffering will end. The harvests will be plentiful, the pestilence will leave, and you will find salvation. It is not by your hands, but by faith that you will find peace." The peasants stood in silence, their eyes cast downward, some looking at the floor, others shifting uncomfortably. Among them was Farmer 3, his face dark with frustration, his fists clenched, his heart pounding in his chest. The priest's words hit him like a slap, igniting the anger that had been simmering within him for so long. He could no longer stay silent. "Pray?" Farmer 3's voice was filled with bitterness. "Pray for what? For more hunger? For more taxes? For the Lord to take what's left of us? Will prayer put food on our table? Will it stop the Lord from taking everything we've worked for?" The room went deathly quiet. The priest's face twisted in disbelief, his eyes narrowing with contempt. The other peasants avoided eye contact with Farmer 3, their fear palpable in the thick air. But Farmer 3's words had cut through the silence like a blade. For a moment, no one spoke, no one dared. The priest took a step forward, his voice now cold and stern. You dare question the will of the Lord? You think that your toil and sweat will save you? No, my child, it is faith that will save you. It is through the grace of the Lord that you will be free of this suffering. You are nothing without His mercy. Without His guidance, you will remain in darkness forever. Farmer 3 took a step closer, his chest rising and falling with the weight of his words. Faith won't feed my children. Father, faith won't save my wife from the sickness that's creeping into her bones. Faith won't stop the Lord's men from taking everything we have. Faith won't save us. We need more than prayer. We need action. The priest's expression hardened. You blaspheme. Child, you question the will of the church, of God. This rebellion you speak of will only lead you to destruction. Farmer 3's voice grew louder, filled with the weight of his frustration. You keep telling us to pray, but all we have is hunger. Father, all we have is death knocking at our door. The rich get richer, and the poor get poorer. The Lord's men come and take what little we have left, and you tell us to pray. What good is faith when our bellies are empty, and our families starve? The peasants shifted uneasily, their eyes flickering with doubt. Some began to nod ever so slightly, their discomfort with the priest's words growing. Farmer 3 continued, undeterred by the priest's anger. We can no longer wait for salvation to come from above. We can no longer sit in this chapel and pray for what will never come. We have to fight for it. Fight for our lives, for our families, for our future. The church may offer us solace in the form of prayer, but it will not give us the freedom we need. Only we can do that. The priest stepped back, stunned by the defiance in Farmer 3's voice. The air in the chapel was thick with tension. The peasants, who had been conditioned to accept their fate, now stood uncertainly, looking from one another to Farmer 3. The priest's grip on the altar tightened as he tried to regain control of the room. You will burn in hell for this heresy. The priest spat, his voice trembling with anger. You will never find peace, never find salvation, if you turn away from the path of righteousness. If you continue down this road, it will lead you to nothing but eternal damnation. Farmer 3's gaze never wavered. His voice was steady, his resolve unwavering. I would rather die standing, fighting for what is ours, than lie on my knees in fear. We will not wait for divine intervention any longer. We will take control of our lives. We will fight. A long silence fell over the chapel. The priest's words had lost their power, his threats hollow in the face of Farmer 3's unwavering conviction. The peasants stood together, their fear slowly turning to something else, something stronger, something more powerful. For the first time, they saw themselves as more than mere servants. They saw themselves as fighters, as free people. Farmer 3 turned toward the others. His voice, once filled with frustration, now carried with it the weight of a vision of a future where they were no longer slaves to the land or the nobility. We fight for each other, for our families, for the future of our children. No more waiting, no more suffering in silence. We take back what is ours. Today, the peasants began to nod, one by one, their faces hardening with determination. They no longer felt like the helpless, broken people they once were. They were united, bound together by something more powerful than fear, hope. As they walked out of the chapel, their heads were held high. The cold stone beneath their feet no longer felt like a prison. It felt like the foundation of something new, something they were about to build. The church may have had its power, but it no longer held the hearts of the people. For the first time in their lives, the peasants understood something profound. Faith in the Lord was not enough. It was their own strength, their unity, their will to fight, that would see them through. Asterisk. The peasants gathered together outside the chapel. The sun sets behind them, casting long shadows, but their faces are full of determination. The fight had begun, and nothing could stop them now. The battle for their freedom was no longer a distant dream. It was a reality, and nothing, the church, the Lord's men, or the nobles, could take that away from them. Expanded emotional and symbolic depth, priests' manipulative power, The priest's attempt to manipulate the peasants with his threats of damnation and his reliance on faith shows the extent of the church's control. His anger and authority can create a sharp contrast with Farmer 3's defiance, which emphasizes the emotional conflict. Farmer 3 as a leader. The transformation of Farmer 3 from an angry peasant to a leader is pivotal. By rejecting faith in favor of action and unity, he becomes the embodiment of resilience and the catalyst for the peasants' fight for dignity. The seeds of rebellion. Through Farmer 3's challenge, the peasants begin to question their submissive obedience. The internal shift from fear to action is a critical turning point that gives the story emotional weight. Emotional stakes. By adding personal sacrifice and family tensions, such as Farmer 3's willingness to fight for his children's future, we increase the emotional stakes. The idea that they are fighting for the next generation adds depth to their rebellion. Crisis and resolution. The final shift in the peasant's mindset, from submitting to prayer to taking action, is marked by a powerful decision. Their resolve to fight, not just for survival, but for freedom, marks a turning point in the narrative. Part 5. Hunger, cold, and survival. The cold, unforgiving winter arrives like a relentless beast. The wind bites at their skin, and the snow piles high against the windows, locking them inside their modest cottage. The fire crackles weakly in the hearth, but its warmth is fleeting, leaving the air damp and heavy with the smell of wet timber. A family of farmers huddles together around the fire. The father, Farmer 1, his hands calloused from years of labor, stokes the fire, his movements slow and tired. His eyes are hollow from hunger, and the weight of winter hangs heavy on his shoulders. His wife, her face gaunt and pale, sits beside him. She arranges a small bowl of soup between them, a thin, watery concoction that barely fills the stomach. Their 2 children sit silently by the fire, their faces pale and their bodies wrapped in threadbare blankets. The cold outside is nothing compared to the cold that fills their hearts. The warmth of the fire barely fights back the chill that runs through their bones. As they eat, the father's eyes flicker over to the small stack of firewood, knowing it's not enough to last through the storm. The cupboards are bare, and they have nothing left to harvest. Every meal, every bite, feels like a battle to survive the next hour, not the next day. But Farmer 1 knows they have no other choice but to keep going. There is no stopping now. Winter Survival Strategy 1. Stockpiling food and supplies. In the fall, the farmers had worked tirelessly, knowing that every grain of wheat and every potato harvested could be the difference between life and death. Every moment of labor in the fields, every back-breaking hour, was spent preparing for the coming winter. Now, it all came down to this. The food in their storehouses would have to carry them through. Farmer 1 and his family had worked together to harvest every last piece of produce from the land. They'd stacked the grain in the barn, wrapped the potatoes in burlap, and carefully preserved the few vegetables they had left. But as the first snow began to fall, they knew the supplies wouldn't last forever. They could only hope it would be enough. Winter Survival Strategy 2. Stockpiling firewood. The second survival strategy was firewood. Without fire, they would freeze. The firewood in the corner of the cottage was their last line of defense against the cold. And it wouldn't last long if they didn't keep chopping. Farmer 2 had spent hours each day cutting logs, stacking them high against the walls. It was grueling work, but it had to be done. Each log, each split piece of timber, was a piece of life. A chance to fight back against the chill that seeped into their bones. The wood was more than just fuel, it was hope, a symbol of their determination to survive. As the days grew shorter and colder, the family huddled closer, their hearts and bodies bound together by the hope that the spring would come, that the cold would pass, and they could finally see the fruits of their labor. But deep down, they knew one thing. They could survive this winter. They would endure. They would make it through. Conclusion. The first rays of dawn break over the horizon, casting a soft, golden light over the land. The snow has melted, and the fields, once dormant and covered in frost, now begin to show signs of new life. The camera pans over the vast, open landscape, the first shoots of green pushing through the soil. The warmth of spring beginning to take hold. Farmers, their faces weathered but hopeful, are already hard at work, their hands moving with precision and purpose. The air smells fresh and full of promise. The bitter winter has passed, but the battle for survival never truly ends. For these farmers, life is a never-ending cycle of struggle and triumph. Each season brings new challenges, new fears, but also new opportunities. They have endured the harshest winters, faced hunger, and stood against forces beyond their control. And yet, here they are, standing tall, stronger for it. Farmer one's hands, once calloused and worn from gripping the axe to chop wood, now delicately plant the first seeds of the new season. He pauses for a moment, glancing at the horizon before looking down at the soil in front of him. A quiet smile tugging at his lips, though their names may never be written in the annals of history. Their legacy lives on, not in grand monuments or royal halls, but in the very soil they've worked, in every seed they plant, in every crop they harvest. There is a piece of something much greater than themselves. They are the backbone of this land, and their strength is felt in every corner of the earth they tend. The entire village working together in the fields. The sun is fully risen now, casting a warm, golden light over the land. The once frozen earth now stirs with new life. The farmers work side by side, a sense of unity in every motion. Though the seasons change and the challenges will come again, the spirit of these farmers will never fade. They've fought not just for survival, but for the future, for their children, for their land, and for their dignity. And in that fight, they are not just nameless, faceless laborers. They are the quiet heroes of history, whose resilience lives on in every generation that dares to rise and fight. The fields stretching endlessly toward the horizon. The farmers continue to work, their figures small but resolute in the vast expanse. The sun shines brightly, casting long shadows on the earth that has sustained them. The message is clear. No matter how hard the struggle, the fight for survival is one worth making. And so, their story continues. A story of resilience, of strength, and of a people who will never surrender. The battles of the past are behind them, but the fight for their future continues, one day at a time. If you found inspiration in their story, if you believe in the power of resilience and the fight for what is rightfully ours, like and subscribe. Join us as we continue to share the stories of those who have faced impossible odds and come out stronger on the other side. Together, we honor their legacy and carry their strength forward into the future.